Hello and welcome to Next Step Tarot. This is Lori and this is a timeless collective reading. This is episode 3 of 5 in the Decision series. What we are going to cover today is what must change before this can move forward. This reading focuses on what must change before movement becomes possible. The decision has already been identified. The requirements have already been revealed. Now we're looking at the blockage itself. What is incompatible with moving forward and why things may still be feeling stalled or stuck. Some decisions remain unresolved because part of the current self, you, is still resisting the next phase. All right, so I want you to please keep in mind that these readings here on Next Step Tarot are not about predicting the future. This is about you finding clarity so that you can figure out what your next step forward is, okay? What you can do to help yourself move forward. So please only take what resonates, leave the rest. Let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to look at is what is no longer working. What is the expired structure here? Let's see what needs to be left behind. Eight of Wands, interesting energy. I'm getting too much information. Too much information. You're giving away too much information. You're talking more than listening. Yeah, I'm getting an energy here of feeling like you have to speak if there's a silence, trying to fill the silence. When we do that, it creates more problems than it solves. So what's no longer working here is talking about your problems, talking too much, filling the blanks, the silences. All right, what is it you're still holding on to here? What's your resistance point? Remember to take your deep breaths, hold them to the count of 2, and release them as slowly as you possibly can and as fully as you possibly can. All right, let's see what you're still holding on to. Something. This feels like a comfort zone, right? It feels like you know this, and it's easier to hang on to this than to change it, to let it go. It could be a person, too, that you're letting go, but this, for you, is more about a comfort zone. Yeah, it's always easier to stay with what we know than it is to move forward, make the changes that we know are necessary. All right, so this may be what you're struggling to release. The next energy we're going to look at here is what the situation is trying to teach you. What's the core lesson here? Ace of Swords, more thinking, less speaking, being clear about what you're saying. Yeah, this is going to bring clarity, intelligence. This is definitely about discernment, knowing when to reveal something, when not to. All right, so this is a lesson that still needs to be learned in order to move forward. If you can see what actually needs to change here, because it may not be that you talk too much. It may be that you tell one person too much. If you see what needs to change, go ahead and put in the comments the word release. That will be a focal point for you, an anchor for you to remember, okay? You may even want to use the word release before you speak, okay? Think the word release. It will pause you before you divulge any type of information to anyone. All right. Let's look at the next section here, the shift that's going to create the movement. What is this necessary adjustment that is going to change this situation for you? Five of Swords. All right, so again, interesting energy here. This is a decision change. This is something that you clearly can adjust. It's about thinking before speaking. It's about being comfortable with who you are. So removing your ego, and I'm not judging here. This is about taking yourself out of the comfort zone, learning the words that you need to use to talk to yourself, and so that you know when it's appropriate to divulge information that you're giving away. Yeah. This is internal. This is not external. You're very, very smart too. That's clear. But there's a need to think about the words that are being said, because I'm getting here, I am getting here that for somebody, what you're talking about, what you're divulging, doesn't make you look intelligent to somebody. Or they're using what you're telling them against you. So only take what resonates, okay? All right, let's see what becomes possible after this shift happens. Let's see what the forward movement can be. Let's see what's going to open up for you once this shift is made. Oh, the World. See, look, once you have a plan in place, the Seven of Swords, the Empress energy, once you have a plan in place, once you think about it and work on that strategy, the whole world opens up for you. But you regain your Empress energy, your personal power. You're not authoritative like the Emperor. You're nurturing, compassionate, diverse, you're creative, you're comfortable. But this only comes once this shift has happened, and you can't make the shift if you don't have a plan, a strategy, something to help you create that change. All right, we are going to close this reading here, but I do want to give you the homework. Look, on the bottom of the deck is the Wheel of Fortune here. Okay, so your destiny is your destiny. You get to help turn that Wheel of Fortune in your favor. The decisions that you make dictate what the outcomes are. And I think you're here and you understand that. All right, so the homework assignment for this personal reading is the resistance inventory. Okay, so you're going to write down your decision that you're trying to work on. You're going to state it out as clearly as possible, which means 1 to 2 sentences, not a whole paragraph, not a whole page, okay? Then answer this question. What part of this situation is no longer working? Okay, whether it's no longer working for you personally, no longer working between you and someone else. What part of this situation is no longer working? Third question. What is it that I am still holding on to? Fourth question, what am I afraid will happen if I make this change? If I decide I'm going to do this, and it's the fear that we're focusing on. What are you afraid will happen? Not what will happen, because we can't predict the future, okay? So the fifth question here is, what behavior or mindset within yourself must change first? All right. And then 6, what becomes possible when I release this resistance? What possibly could happen, okay? There's no guarantee, but what becomes possible is the better way to put that. Because I want you looking and focusing at the positive side of if you release this resistance. I do not want you focusing on the negative, okay? I want you to focus strictly in the positive energy. What becomes possible? What opens up for me if I release resistance? All right, so your goal with this homework assignment is to identify the exact point where your resistance is blocking your movement. And you can only do that once you do the homework, okay? Complete the homework and then go back and identify the exact point where resistance is blocking your movement. Once you know that, anything is possible and you can move forward. All right, let's wrap this up. Remember that this is just a moment in time. This is not going to last forever. All right, it's just a single step in the journey of your life. So make the next step that you take be a deliberate step, a clear one, and then you'll know what action to take. If you would like personal guidance, there are links in the description box. I am not putting the homework in there right now because there's been so many other things going on. So if you want that homework assignment, just go back and listen to the questions that I gave you here in the reading. All right, until next week, I wish you namaste.